Well, welcome everybody. My name is Chris McQueen. I am the host of the Iowa Gravel Series podcast, the Podium podcast. So excited to have you listening here. We have a fantastic big guest is Nate Kullbom. That is a name that you probably have heard if you race and have been around Iowa for any amount of time. Nate owns a shop. He runs races. He's fast and wins races. So we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. And Nate, just super excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Great to be here. Great for recognizing, winners and podium achievers of events. So I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. For me, this is an opportunity to kind of get to know the folks and hopefully other people to get to know the folks that are on these podiums and winning races on the Iowa Gravel Series. Cause I'll tell you a dirty little secret. I've really never won a race. And so maybe that's, kind of like, if you can't teach, if you can't race, direct. And so for me, the opportunity to kind of get to know folks like you and understand, what you're doing and the work that you're putting in is a pleasure. So thanks for your time.
Cool. Well, it's nice to know people like appreciate and value that. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So let's go ahead and get to know you just a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Where you're from? Are you native to Iowa? What's kind of your background?
Yeah, I'm basically native to Iowa. Grew up in Burlington, which is southeast Iowa, Rivertown. Grew up there. I was not an athletic kid. I was not in sports, but I did ride BMX. Had a group of friends. We rode BMX around downtown Burlington. We were able to get a skate park in our town. We had trails with dirt jumps. So that's how I got my biking background. It's not, I wasn't in track or good at anything like that, but I learned how to ride a bike pretty good. And then years later, I got into bike racing. That was about 15 years ago, and I've been doing it nonstop ever since. I've raced consistently season round for 15 years without ever more than a couple months off. I got really injured. So I've been very consistent for the last 15 years of bike racing. And started out mountain bike, cross country, cyclocross, road racing. And then 2018, I kind of switched over to more endurance focused mountain biking, 4-hour races. And then, as we all know, if you want to race, gravel is the most happening thing. So it just makes sense to do gravel racing because there's just so many options. That's kind of where everything's been headed. So I'd like to race mountain bikes more, but it's been primarily gravel for 5 years now. So,
That I hear that. I hear that a lot from folks sometimes. Got some friends that have been that they love crit racing or they've loved road racing and things like that. And being in Iowa, they're like, but in this, or maybe even the wider Midwest, they're like, well, I want to compete. And so gravel races is the place to be. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, what is it about competition that's like kept you involved for so long? Like, when do you feel like there was a point you caught the bug that you're like, oh, I'm fast. I like winning. I like doing these things. What changed from just, hey, I'm a kid on a BMX bike wanting to, jump things with my buddies to like, you know what? I know racing is where it's at.
just being in the bike shop, you meet people and, inevitably you're going to meet bike racers and just eventually going from riding BMX to like actually, and you're seeing some of the BMXs I grew up with, I got into racing early, but now they're getting into like riding adult bikes, like, going out riding 20, 30 miles instead of BMX. But yeah, basically just meeting people that get you into it. I didn't say I want to start bike racing and then, get a racing bike and start riding. Like somebody was like, hey, come ride with us. And one thing led to another. And then you're doing a mountain bike race. And the next thing you know, you've got a bike to race every discipline. Most people know how it goes with biking. You start with one bike and then you've got 3 or 4 to do everything. And for me, I also pretty much raced everything. So, that's basically it.
Okay. Yeah, so, I mean, I think that that sense of community is a big thing, or friends getting you into it is a big thing, and it's
Yeah.
common. Um, uh, would maybe a question we'll come back to, because we got a few other things here, because this is kind of your background, um, but I wanna talk about racing and specifically around, 2 things. One, there was a recent race that well, you won the Waukon 100, so that's something I wanna
Mhm.
talk about. And then there was a lifetime race, the Letson 99er that you recently, came in pretty high in the standings in. Wanted to talk about that. And then the other race that we got going on, for you, is Core 4, which is coming up in August, and you're a part of putting that on. So let's start with
Mhm.
Walk On a little bit, and tell me a little bit about what your experience was, on that race, why you chose it, and and maybe for folks that don't or haven't seen it, been on Walk On before the Walk On 100 before, what kind of race is it? Like, what's the terrain? What does it kind of gives a feel?
Yeah. So I've wanted to do one of your races ever since they came about. And you know how it goes. It just has never worked out. Something else was going on, something with the kids was going on, another race was going on. Finally, stars aligned. I was able to do one, walk on 100. And it was also a week before Letson, which was a huge race in my calendar. So I love doing a race before a race to just get primed up, get ready. Um, so, anyways, everything worked out. I got to come do walk on, and I knew the area. I knew it was going to be a great race, and I know that that's kind of your goal is you don't live anywhere near a lot of your races, but you pick spots that you know are good, which is awesome because nothing bugs me more than doing a boring race with boring terrain. And I feel like you've set out to say, I'm going to go to these places that are way out there that have the best. We want hills. We want twisty roads. We don't want flat grid. I think that's what everybody wants. So, um, anytime you can achieve a race that has no straight lines, which I think most of your races do that, that's uh, that's what I'm looking for. That Waukon delivered. Um, you know, I really liked it. The gravel was super fast, super smooth, but the roads they were all curvy, twisty, windy. There was big hills, big climbs. I like the big descents. I can always put a pretty big gap on people on the descents and make them kind of question what the heck's going on. So I enjoy doing that as a mountain biker. Uh, there was a couple downhills where I sent people almost into the ditch trying to come after me. So that's always fun. Um, it was a competitive race. We had a big group until about mile 25, and then it was just myself. This Thomas kid was able to come with me, and we rode together the whole race until the very end. I was able to get a gap and take the win. Um, so, yeah, love the race. Looking forward to doing another one next year, hopefully.
Yeah, it wasn't like because of the way that race worked out, I ended up having an opportunity to get out on the course a little bit and see you guys. And seeing you and Thomas racing, I honestly got like almost carried away. I was super excited. I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be fun to see if because it was gonna be fun to see what really happened at the end. And I think I even shouted that out at you guys at one point during the race because I mean, Thomas was right on your wheel, I think up until the very last hill. And it
Yeah.
was just a question in my mind is like, how much gas does this young guy, because Thomas is not, I think he's in college or yeah, I'm pretty sure he's still in
Mhm.
college. Um, I'm like, how much gas does this guy have in the tank having, stuck on your wheel the whole time? Was that a question or concern? Like, or were there tells that you're like, I think I'll be able to be okay at the end? What was kind of your feeling as he was on you for most of the race?
Well, yeah, I didn't know him, and I had no idea who he was. So I never want to assume I'm just going to be better. But and we worked together for most of the race. I mean, we just traded poles. There was no screwing around. No playing games. It was just we had a couple people behind us. So I wanted to make sure that we kept a gap on them, and also I wanted to get in a good training ride for Lutzen. So I wanted to ride hard. I didn't want to play games and stuff. And towards the end, it started to get a little punchy, and he started trying to attack me. And I was just kind of relaxed, taking my time on some of those punchy climbs. And letting him go. And I think he thought I was tired, but really I was just kind of chilling. I felt kind of bad because, like you said, he's a young kid and I've been doing this for 15 years. So I kind of knew when he started trying to attack me on those punchy climbs, I kind of knew that I was going to be able to beat him just because, I could tell he was really trying to get me on those and I was just kind of doing my thing. I also wanted to average over 20 miles an hour on the race. So then it kind of like, okay, I want to go this fast, but then I was like, I can't risk losing. So I started to slow down at the very end. And then that last climb, it was on the right with GPS, you end with a long, long climb and it ended up not really being a climb. Like, I mean, it was barely a climb, but it was like 10 minutes, barely a climb. So it would have been really fun to blast up that, but I kind of just let him lead up that. And then at the very end, it pitched up steep and he tried to attack me on that and it was like, he just didn't have anything left to attack. And I just came around him. And then after you turn the corner at the top, it's just a flat out for like a mile. And, I just hammered it home from there. So, but
Yeah,
he was really good to ride with until he started trying to attack me. Thanks so much.
well, it is a competition.
He's-
Racers are going to race, right?
Yep. Yep. So he's a young kid and he'll learn and I'm sure he'll get stronger if he keeps riding. So, but yeah,
Yeah, no,
it was really fun.
yeah, that seems a lot of fun. And I've learned I'm starting to get a sense for some of the things that I want to have on this race, and some of the other ones. And, I was really excited for Waukon to have that long, basically 1 mile straightaway there at the end to see how many folks stuck together, towards the end for a pack and get a little bit of a fun, exciting finish. I'm glad it didn't end up being too exciting this year because they've laid down some fresh gravel on that road, which, I can't control or anything like that. So I was pretty happy to see, everybody come in with smiles and pretty excited. So that was fun. And you're right. Like, that last hill, you look on the elevation map and you're like, oh my gosh, what is this thing? And it's really just kind of like this beautiful, windy, slight uphill that you kind of have to get up then a little bit at the end. So it's a little bit of it's disingenuous on Ride with GPS for the elevation map.
Yeah. It was a gorgeous road, but yeah, it was just barely a hill, but
Yeah.
that's fine with me.
Well, okay. Well, so that you mentioned Letson 99er. Tell me about that race and why that was the big one on your calendar.
Yeah. So to those that don't know, what's the 99er? It's a lifetime event. It's basically like a Midwest Leadville. It's a Leadville qualifier, so it's a huge race. It's the biggest race I've ever done. And the first year I did it, I got fifth and not knowing how I would do. And I realized that race really suited me, and that I could do well. And it's also super fun, but it's basically a gravel race that you need a mountain bike for because there's snowmobile trails with huge like rocks that you're surely going to smash a wheel on if you're on a gravel bike. So anyways, it's super fun. It's huge. It's not too much climbing, like 6,000 feet of climbing. For this year is only 86 miles. They had shortened it. So it suits me really well at the power course, and I just really like it and I can do well. So that's just a big race that I'm targeting. So I got fourth and I was only about 2 minutes back from first place. We were all together at the finish. It ends on some pretty technical single track. And even though I consider myself a good mountain biker, I just got outclassed on the single track. So, I was really close, but I had a great race. And, Waukon was a great race to prime myself with. So I'm really grateful that I had that too. So, and the start times were about identical. So it was nice to practice waking up super early for your race, getting the food in, getting the bathroom stuff figured out. And then, a week later, my body's ready to do it again because I just did it. So that was awesome too.
Oh, that's sweet. So tell me a little bit about what were you riding? What was the bike you were on for the 99er?
Yeah. So same mountain bike I use for mountain bike racing. It's a Santa Cruz Blur, the cross country bike, 120 millimeters of travel, which is a little much for a race like that. It's a little overkill, but it's a fast bike. And then I run the Continental Race King the 29 by 2.2, super fast. It's like the fastest mountain bike tire. So if you look at the starting row of the Letson 99er, like the front 2 rows of people all have that tire. It's just the fastest tire. So I did flat like 10 miles in. There's a huge puddle, like channel creek thing you have to ride through. And it's just this inky black water. And it had been raining all day the day before. So this thing was full of water. And I put my front tire in that, try to get my weight back to get weight off the front tire. As my front tire rolled out of that inky black water, there's just a geyser of orange steel shooting out of a huge hole and that black water spraying everywhere. And luckily I got it plugged in like less than a minute. And 10 minutes later of chasing out back onto the front group. So that's how good I was feeling that day. I was able to get back in the front group within 10 minutes of a 1 minute flat fix. So that was pretty amazing.
That is amazing. And so, I want to talk a little bit about 99, but I want to pitch you just as an intermediate here on this race, because you run a shop, right? You're part of Sugar Bottom, right?
Yeah. Yep. So I don't own the shop. I just run all the operations and pretty much everything.
Yep.
Yep.
So I'm curious. You've been in this game a little bit longer than I have, because I've had an idea. I'm going to soft pitch it to you and see what you think of it. I've thought that it'd be interesting to have a race where mechanicals were actually part of the race, where you had to stop in at certain points, fix a flat, swap a tire, maybe even like true a spoke or something. Just like maybe you spin a wheel and you have to pick one of these mechanicals that happen, and there's some dummy bike there that you got to fix or something like that. If you were if someone pitched that race as like mechanical mayhem or anything, would you sign up for it, or mechanicals on the race like the least fun thing for you?
Man, I think that would be a great idea for like a training ride, like an event it's more like a training event where this stuff is, you have to like ride up a big hill as fast as you can and then stab your tire with a knife at the top of it and then fix it when you're like out of breath. Like, I like where you're going with this. I don't know if I would sign up for like a race, but I think it's a great idea. It's some sort of an event. Yeah. You might be onto something there.
Well, I mean, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. There's tons of fun ideas, but do you feel like because you've spent so much time in a shop that it really lends you to, when a mechanical happens, you've maybe got a little bit of an advantage in a race? If, all things being the same, everybody's having issues with their bikes, you're probably going to get it fixed faster than others. Has that been your experience, or do you feel like it just luck of the draw?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone that can work on their own bikes and fix their bikes is going to have an advantage if they have a mechanical. The tire plugging, not so much, because that's just something you don't ever do unless you run over something sharp. And us as Iowans, we have a huge disadvantage if we're traveling anywhere else in the US and we can get flats like that, because we don't get flats here. I mean, I never get flats because we don't have sharp stuff, So, I go and I do races where there's sharp stuff, and I've gotten better at it just from stuff that's happened to me at races. And it wouldn't be a bad idea to practice. And we actually run clinics at our shop in the winter where we let people come practice with different tire plugs, fixing flats. So, yeah, it's definitely a thing.
Yeah, I was down at Fayetteville, that UCI race last year, the first year that that gravel qualifier for the UCI in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And I mean, just sharp stuff. And I ended up with a puncture that I had to fix, and I got it and everything. But I think you're right. It's the first time I've ever had to pull out my Dynaplug and like try and get that going on a course. And fortunately it worked. It worked great, but you're right. Iowa is not a place that's going to naturally train you to have those. We're kind of spoiled.
Yeah. And I think if this goes out to the kind of newbies and stuff out there, if you're getting a lot of flats riding gravel in Iowa, you can do something much better with your setup to avoid that. You should not be getting flats. So, I could go on all day about what to do, what not to do, but just know that if you frequently are flatting your bike, you need to fix your setup, talk to someone who knows what they're doing and figure out why you're getting flat, because you really shouldn't be getting them in Iowa. So that's my first piece of
Right.
advice to new
You need
gravel
to
riders.
take the bike into Sugar Bottom. They're going to help you figure it out. It's going to get dialed in. That'll be good. Unless you're in the west side of the state, because it's a little bit of a drive. Speaking of a little bit of a drive, and in the east side of the state, the third thing we want to talk about here is Core 4, and I've got lots of questions there, because it's really just exploded. It's been fantastic. It's a race that I really, really wish I could do. And the only unfortunate thing is, I would do it, but it's the same day as our Soldier Cutoff Hilduro, which is on the far west side of the state in the Les Hills. Core 4 is over kind of near you guys. So hopefully maybe next year we'll figure that out. But give me a little bit of a history, kind of why Core 4 exists. Where is it going, and what to expect this year? Let's start with the history. Who kind of like said, hey, we should do this?
Yeah. So Core 4 origin story is a good one. It all started with Rule of 3 in Bentonville, which is the same format: 50 miles of pavement, or 50 miles of gravel, 30 miles of pavement, 20 miles of single track. And so I did this race in 2021, the inaugural year. It's a huge race, thousands of people. And then I was on Strava. I've got a lot of Strava followers, and I was doing rides where I was training for Rule 3, and I was riding Sugar Bottom, our local single track, and I was saying Rule 3 training rides. And a local guy, Alex Boomeyer, who follows me, was seeing these training rides, and he looked up Rule 3. He says, I'm going to do this too. He went down and did it. And then, I actually didn't know him at this time. I knew who he was, but we hadn't met. And then he came out to the shop and approached me, and he said, let's do this in Iowa City. And, he's a big go-getter. And he's put in the majority of the work on Core 4, but, that was his vision, and he got me on board to help out. We got Andy from Rule 3 to help us out as well. So he's helped with the promotion of Core 4. He made the website, and he's been a part of it as well. And then we brought on Liz Hubing, who is a local gal that runs a business called Bike Iowa City, like a promotional deal. I don't know, entity. I don't know what to call Bike Iowa City, but she does social media and marketing and stuff. So it's the four of us basically, and together, with Alex and his partner Rachel, who's brought on board last year. I've just done tons of work, tons of marketing, tons of promotion. And that's kind of why it's as big as it is. It's mostly because of them just putting in just so much work and just so much passion. And, Alex has just kind of willed it into this thing. And I'm just kind of along for the ride, to be honest. So I would say I'm a consultant. I put in a lot of work too, but I'd say I'm mostly a super important consultant on the event. So, what other questions do you have about it?
Well, so I heard really good things about it last year. I heard a few gripes, and that maybe this is just me. Maybe this was just like the one person I talked to. I've heard a few gripes about being too ruddy, and I don't know if that's just Iowans being like, hey, we're used to smooth, easy stuff. Or, so just, I heard some really good things about the format, how it was put on, but then they were like, oh, I don't know about the course. There's things that people didn't like, but in the back of my head, I'm like, that's the point of Rule of 3, that there should be a part of that race, depending on which bike you decide to pick, that should suck, because that's the problem with it. You can only pick one bike, and you've got a bunch of different terrain formats. So in my mind, I'm like, that's genius. It's always going to have a villain. It's always going to have a hard part. But what do you say to the kind of the feedback, or what did you hear about the course, and what are you doing for this year?
So I do want to address the gripes, and I do understand where those people are coming from. But I'm going to offer our solution here. What I don't want to do is upset the people that like the hard shit. And I want to reassure them that it's going to be all good. But basically, the gripes come from our single track Sugar Bottom. It is extremely ruddy. and rough and bumpy. And I can see where some people would say we want to do something hard, but this was overkill. It was too much. And what I'll say about Sugar Bottom is that this year I've removed about 1 mile of the roughest trails and added about 1 mile of the funnest, fastest trails. And then overall at Sugar Bottom as a whole has undergone hours of trail work this summer that has smoothed it out a little bit. So for those people that got their brains rattled a little too much, it's going to be a better experience for them. For those people that want it to be hard, it's still going to be freaking hard. So it's just going to be more fun and more fast. So, I've always been a race director that I want to listen to people, and I don't want to take that it's my way or the highway type mentality about things. So I think there's going to be a good balance. The hardcore people are still going to love it. And the people that were pissed off about the roots last year probably aren't coming back, which is fine. But for anyone new who wants to try it, it's going to be a little smoother than last year.
Okay, so a little bit smoother, flowy mountain bike stuff. I think that makes sense. But what about the other parts of it? Like, how would you describe the road sections and the gravel sections? And are you doing anything there differently, or is it going to be pretty similar to last year?
Yeah, it's 95% the same. We've added a little bit of new roads to the 100-mile race, 100-mile-ish. I'm not going to announce the full distance yet, but basically last year was 103 miles. And I figured since I'm smoothing out Sugar Bottom a little bit, people are going to get through Sugar Bottom faster this year. But I want the finish times to be around the same time. So we did add some mileage to the 100-mile route. So a little bit new and fun stuff for the 100-milers. 50-mile route's going to be almost identical to last year. And then we have a 25-mile route as well. That's going to be identical. So, and yeah, the gravel, the pavement, it's like I said, with what I appreciate about your races and routes, doing the best to avoid straight lines and flat. So, we're a little bit limited in what we can do just due to the fact that we want to incorporate 2 different single track sections. There's only so many ways to get from one to the other. But the roads are great. There's lots of B road MMRs. There's grass kind of roads. There's bandit trails. There's a little bit of everything, and about probably 6,000 feet of climbing in the 100-mile route.
Oh, which isn't too bad. I mean, especially for that type of distance. So, I mean, I look at Sugar Bottom, and the team has done such a great job promoting it. I mean, being essentially in your second year and growing so much and having such a great first year showing, where is it going from here? Like, what are you thinking for the future of it? Do you feel like you've kind of got it dialed in, or are there things left undone that you're like, oh yeah, we still got stuff that we want to do that maybe just is going to take some time to produce or pull together?
That's probably a better question for Alex than me. Like, I'm a pretty simple guy. Like, I'm content with just status quo, keeping things how they are year after year. I haven't been in a huge rush to grow my other event, like that kind of event I do. We just kind of keep it low stress and go from year to year. I think Alex wants to continue to grow, but at a reasonable pace. Last year we had 660 people, and I think we kind of agreed this year like 800 to 1,000 max would be, just not growing too much, keeping the experience good and just going a little bit each year. So, that's kind of what I would expect and like to see. I'm not sure what deep down he wants, if he wants this thing to blow up and be massive or what. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I'm just gonna ride it out. And I think a lot of it depends on just the gravel scene in general. Like, there's just so many events, and I think maybe it's kind of plateaued in growth, and we might even start to see some events start to disappear. And then, just like a business, if you get too many businesses competing, eventually the smaller guys might kind of give up. And, whether that means more growth for the other events or not, I don't know. It's tough to say. I'll be content with whatever,
Yeah, that makes sense. And I've seen it actually myself. A friend of mine who puts on Cole McAlpine had put on Southwest Iowa gravel grinder swig for a number of years, and had a chance to talk to him recently, and he says, yeah, it's not it's not coming back. And that's fine. He did it for a number of years, and we know Mark Stevenson in Trans Iowa, and so there's this life cycle that happens to these races and to these events where they come, they grow, they get to where they need to be, and then there's eventually a point where it's like, I think those things are done. It's very difficult, and I don't think necessary for every event to have a 40-50 year legacy like Ragbri does. Those are
Mhm.
unique and on themselves. So yeah, I kind of get that. Yeah, I think we are seeing a little bit of change in gravel, and so there's there's going to be folks that are going to stick around, but there's going to be, especially post pandemic, I think uh, there's a lot of desire to do different things as well, and so I think you see a lot more variety. Yeah,
So yeah, it'll be interesting just to see what happens. And you know, bringing up the swig thing, I mean, I think it also, and you face this challenge because having your events that are out in the middle of nowhere, tough. Because you're going out there because that's where you can make a really awesome course. You're not near a big metro. So, Core 4, we've got it good because we've got the Iowa City Metro and there's tons of riders, that it's right out their doorstep. So, we've automatically got 200 to 300 people that are, this is their local race. And so that helps numbers too. When you can start off with a huge metro to get the numbers boosted. And then, I think people go and to look at an event and they see a lot of people signed up and they're like, okay, this is cool. There's a lot of people I want to do it. So I can see it being a big challenge trying to, host an event in a rural area, um, to get numbers up. It's hard to get people to travel. So,
yeah,
um,
it is.
like,
It is. We
so
we benefit we benefit over here on the west side of the state from having the Omaha Metro close to us, but
yeah,
it's really not as significant as kind of the east side of Iowa, where you get past Des Moines and head west in Iowa, and the population drops a lot. It's different. So, well, okay, let's go back, I guess, then to you real quick as we kind of wrap up. I'm curious, like, as you're looking at your season, you've had a big race, you've got Sugar Bottom coming up. What what are your goals? Are you starting to turn your focus towards next year, or do you have gravel worlds or other big races in the fall that you're aiming for?
yeah. So usually I do. Usually I have like a first part of the season. May, June is usually a big race or two for the past few years. And then I have like a big target in the fall. Last year I did gravel worlds and then core four was the next weekend. And so, yeah, I also race core four in addition to, helping run it and setting up the course and all that. So yeah, gravel worlds core four was my big fall, late summer target last year. Obviously I'm doing core four again this year. So I guess it's core four is my next target, which is a month away. Um, but after that, really, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do yet. I'm still tossing up doing the Schwammergen 40, which is a 40-mile mountain bike race. I've never done that one. It's similar to the Lutzen in that it's kind of like a very easy, non-technical mountain bike race. Might do that. I really don't know. So I'm still riding a ton. I'm still training, but I wouldn't say I'm like specifically gonna like taper and peak for some super important race other than core four. And that's not gonna go too hard as far as like training specifically for that. But normally I do. So kind of a weird year for me. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
that
don't know
that makes
why
sense.
why it's like that this year. But that's just what it is. So I gotta say I just try to stay 95% fitness all the time. So, I'll be pretty much ready to strike whatever race.
Well, that kind of leads me to the other question I like to ask, which is there big thing that's kind of, you know, some people call it bucket list, some people, your Everest or whatever. Like it's the thing where you're like, man, I really want to make sure I get this in at some point. It's not maybe the right point now because of work or family or whatever, but is there something that you're like, oh, this is what I'd like to do?
There is not. Yeah, man. I mean, 41 right now. So, as far as like achieving a big result or something, I've been racing since I was 24, 25. I've already done, you know, all the big races. I've gotten some really good big results. I mean, I don't have some big goal or big bucket list thing. I want to do some big races I haven't done. Like I said, the Schwamigan 40 would be an example of a big race that I just haven't done that I probably should try. But I want to give Letson another shot next year. I was 2 minutes from winning that, so I'll keep trying for that. But I mean, like I said, I'm 41. The kid that won it this year is 21, lives in Durango, Colorado, at elevation, rides 3 hours, 4 hours a day in Durango, Colorado. So, I mean, who am I kidding really? I'm super satisfied with, racing wise, everything I've accomplished. I'm satisfied. I'm good. I'm just going to keep going as long as I can. But I guess to answer your question, like what's probably next for me is, starting to just transition from racing to, I've started coaching the kid mountain bike team this year. So starting to kind of pass down knowledge, and hopefully some of these kids I'm coaching will be able to take over and start winning races as I start to, you know, race less, maybe as I get older. So
Yeah, well, that's brilliant, especially the coaching and getting involved with the youth. Because I'm really as a race director, I'm thinking about that a lot as well, and that kind of maybe leads us to last question, so we can kind of wrap up here. But if you had kind of a magic wand, I mean, you have a nice perspective. You're both a racer, a race director. You're in the shop all the time. You're seeing people with bikes all the time. I mean, if you could just magically make something happen in the cycling industry, or with the way the gravel and cycling world is running, what would you do? What would you love to see just, magically happen?
mm, so I guess like I don't want to get into like the cycling industry and stuff because I'm just dragged by a week right now, and there's chaos in the bike shop happening below me, and I just don't want to think about that sort of thing right now. And but as far as like gravel, there's been a couple things on my mind, honestly, lately. Um, one thing that worries me a little bit is that, and you know, tell me if you agree with me on this, but when gravel started, what I thought was so great about it is that it was gravel racing, right? But it's also something where people that aren't into racing can come do, and they can just participate in the event and have their own goal, treat it as a ride, you know, be non-competitive. But these things started as races, and but they allowed everyone to come together and ride, whether they were competing or not. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what got me
Yeah.
involved, because I knew I wasn't going to be on the podium, but I love to ride my bike, and it was for me
Yeah.
moving around the country a little bit a way to get involved. So yeah, yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. And so I love the fact that everybody can come and do the same event, whether you want to race and be competitive or not. And I'm starting to see a little bit of like an anti competitiveness mentality coming in some events and some groups. Like there's events now which are, you know, it's just a ride, and it's kind of anti competition. So it kind of bums me out. I feel a little bit, you know, hurt by that, you know, gravel events started out as races that were also welcoming to non-competitive folks. And now I feel like we're seeing non-competitive events that are saying like, whoa, 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 this ain't a race. We're not into racing. Like that's not cool. So that worries me a little bit that, it's a slippery slope type thing. And what if eventually these sorts of things take over and there's less racing? That's got me worried. Um, so I just wish that we could continue with the whole, this is a race, but you're not racing. You're welcome to come ride, rather than the other way around. maybe I'm looking into that too much. Maybe there's room for both, but that concerns me a little bit. I mean, I've got one other thing to mention too, but what do you think? Your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, coming from the other side of it, right? Because like I mentioned, I've never been on the podium. Like I totally appreciate and love the racing part of it because I do like the pushing. I love watching and seeing the race. Like I don't love watching the Tour de France because I just don't like sitting on my couch at a race. But if I can be part of that, that's really exciting to me. So I would never personally want to get rid of racing as part of an event like this, unless I'm saying, okay, yes, these are races, but now I'm going to put on a tour, right? Like a tour as in like, Ragbri is a tour, right? Dalmac in Michigan. I don't know if you've ever heard of that one. These are tours. Their intent is to, see a lot of land and you stop and it's very collegial and it's much more about travel and tourism maybe instead of like fitness and the event. Although obviously you have to be fit to complete these things at a certain level. So for me,
Mhm.
I intentionally put on a series because I wanted people to have opportunities to train and to get prepared for things. I wasn't looking personally just because I didn't really, honestly, I probably didn't just have like the vision or or felt like it could happen. I didn't go into gravel or series racing and everything thinking I was going to be seat, Unbound or gravel worlds or anything. I'm like, no, I think there's a place for the gravel series to prepare for events like this and to be a little bit smaller, a little bit local, a little bit, um, hey, let's go see another part of Iowa, a little bit of adventure, the kind of stuff that I wanted to do, but still have that racing component in it because I think that's important for uh, getting better. Is you have to kind of have a little bit of an idea of like, all right, here's where I'm at. Here's where I'm at. How can I get to that next level? I think races are motivating essentially. And so I think they do play a place. I think I'm also fairly like, I'm not too worried about other people's events. So if there's other people's events that are like, hey, participation points for everybody, that's fine.
Mhm.
I think that's one of the neat things about cycling is that if there's something that you love, there's someone probably out there on a bicycle doing it in some way. And so you can kind of find that. And I think it's big enough that it can handle that. Um, I'll tell you for next year, we're thinking a lot more about how we do, or if we do points, whether and how we do points that allow for both the racing side of things and the non-racing side of things. These are questions in our mind as we think about next year. Um, we're thinking a lot more about training, like how do we help people prepare for these things so that they can, get to that next level. I want people to come back from an event with a desire to do more. I don't want the most the worst thing I can do as a race director is sell you an event and then you come away going, this sucks. I never want to do this again. That's the thing that I don't want. So for me,
Mhm.
yes, racing is important because I think it's motivating. I'm not too worried about what other people do. But I do think that it's okay to not race. So I'm probably some like, it feels like some political answer, but that's kind of the line that
Yeah.
that I ride.
Yeah. I am passionate about racing and I am scared of things that might make less racing happening. So, that's just something I've noticed that, you're right. It's probably fine. And I shouldn't be worried about, uh, what other people are doing, but, um, I don't want bike racing to go away. So, um,
Well, I think you're doing a very good thing, especially with your coaching of youth, because what I would definitely not want is I would not want kids thinking that competition is bad.
mhm,
I think one of the worst things that we can do is train ourselves and others into thinking that competition is mean and ugly and hard and unfair and
Yeah.
and prideful, like all these bad things that people could see from competition. I would love to root that out so that people can say, no, healthy competition, being a good sport, um, learning and about training and preparation and developing talents. That's something that is going to like, not only is that going to help you in cycling, that's going to help you in life. And so I think there's some definite value there that I would not want, especially for youth, for competition to go away, because I think it's
Yeah.
too important to feel okay with competing.
Yeah. I think you just said way better what I meant when I started this whole part of the conversation. Um, yeah, rides that are not races are fine, but I don't like it when people act like competition because that's kind of the vibe I've been getting that I don't like. So what you just said is what I meant, not what I said earlier. So thanks for like totally like, yeah, way better with words than me on all. Yeah.
Well, what's the other thing? What's the other thing?
Oh,
I'm curious about your magic wands.
yeah. So that was what worried me about, um, what worrisome thing that I've seen in gravel. The other thing would just be like, it would be awesome if bike racing and gravel racing in general could be more like, you see like 5Ks and running events where, you know, there's way more, there's way more money involved in, I mean, I don't want to say more money, but just more people and, stuff is a little bigger, it seems, so just continuing to build community and build people where we can get these events that are just, I like small events, but there's also something really special about, um, going to an event with really good infrastructure and a lot of people. Yeah, I guess I don't really know where I was going with that.
Well, no worries.
Maybe you
I
can
think I
give
that's
me a
also
thing again where you put better into words what I am trying to say and doing a terrible job at it.
no, you're fine. And but I think the thought that I have as you say that is that yes, like for the gravel series, we're looking at also putting more shorter distances on all of the races, and we haven't finalized all that yet, but it's something that we're thinking about because again, it goes back to that ethos of like we want this to be approachable and that people need events to grow up into, right? And doing those and putting on those events in a good way. I mean, that's the reason why I'm sure Core 4 has as many distances as they do, is because they want to have something that people can go in and say, all right, I know I can do that distance. I don't know if I can do those three surfaces, but let's see what happens. And they can
Right.
experiment with one thing at a time. And I think that's important. And I think, I've done the 5Ks and the 10Ks and everything like that. I always love those environments. I just don't love running as much as I love biking. And
Mhm.
so I stick with biking, and uh, I think we can get there. Um, the question, and I think we'll just leave this as an open question, especially as a bike shop. Maybe we'll have to figure out. I know you'll hopefully be on another race, and so that means you'll be on another podium podcast, and we can follow up with this question. But how to make cycling economically viable is, I think, a tricky thing because it's really hard to compete against a pair of shoes that are maybe 50 to $100 versus a bike that you can race on that might be
Mhm.
$1,000 to $5,000. We're talking about very different economics there and complexity.
Mhm.
So it's under, I think a lot of people understand that. So how do we make cycling something that's approachable in all its different ways is a tricky one. So I'll leave that question there if that's okay, unless you have the magic answer, and then I
No,
please
yeah,
please answer it.
you get what I was trying to say. That's yeah. I don't try to get too philosophical or about the gravel scene and uh, have all these ideas of what it should be or could be. So um, yeah, I'm just a bike racer, man, and I'm just glad these events are here to do, and I'm glad I get to put them on as well. It's freaking awesome. So
It is
um,
it is freaking awesome, and you're doing a great job, and I appreciate having you here, Nate. I'm sure we're gonna have more chats in the future. Um, but thank you so much. This has been an awesome conversation, and we'll catch up with you here soon.
all right, thanks again for having me, Gus.
See you later.
Yep. Bye.